Here we capture the brilliance and beauty of our everyday discussions. My name is Bradley Gomia, and today I'm your host. Last episode was all about talent and expression within the speech community as a facet of speech and debate. Now we'd like to focus on those students who are learning it all on their own. What it takes to succeed by self-learning in debate. Dennis Filbert, an actor and coach of the speech team at Central High School, shared his experience on helping students through to national championships. Let us discuss the ideas and terms that are most important to those national championships for all the viewers there at home. If you enjoy these topics, please let us know on our YouTube page at the Newark Debate Academy. Today, our topic will be discussed between our two newest guests. They are both debate coaches from local teams in Newark at Mount Vernon Middle School as well as North Star Academy. Please welcome Miss Whitney Farrand and Nicole Nave. This episode is geared toward the student who has read basic material but lacks intermediate skill and is actively searching for guidance. The subjects covered include cases, spreading, cards, rhetoric, and education. Our two guests are both self-starters by record and by reputation. We would like to know where they have been influenced and to present some of the journey that's natural in debate, where there's ups and downs to define the whole experience.
Before we begin, there's some updated news that you may have missed. To begin with, Rutgers' very own and today's guest, Nicole Nave, and her partner, Devon Murphy, received a first round at large to the National Debate Tournament, which is like the Super Bowl of debate. While Luis Carrera and Chaz Weich qualified to the National Debate Tournament through district qualifiers, the first Rutgers team to do it in 7-year existence of the team. Secondly, Science Park's Brianna Aaron advanced to the quarterfinals of the California Invitational at the University of California, Berkeley. Newark Debate Academy recently hosted its last tournament on their current middle school policy debate topic. The United States federal government should eliminate all tariffs on the People's Republic of China's development and manufacturing of solar power technology. Good luck to all incoming participants. We cannot wait to see you in debate. And now, back to our show.
Let's go by a time frame. What first sparked your debate career?
Well, for me, debate has been a family tradition. My father was a high school debater and actually brought debate to the city of Newark in the 80s. So I grew up in a debate family around debaters. I'm named after a debater. Though I didn't debate in high school, I've always been interested and surrounded by debate.
Cool. How about you, Nicole?
Well, just very similar to Ms. Farrand, I come from a family of debaters. My brother was the first person in my family to start debating. He inspired me to debate. I also found myself always constantly striving to be like him, following his path, following his similar forms of education and different things like that. So it's been a family tradition that we've had for a while now.
Nicole, what has it been like coming all the way from the state of Missouri?
It's really been a culture shock. New Jersey is so different and lively compared to Missouri. I'm not going to say Missouri's bland, tired, and dehydrated, but it is a little different than New Jersey. New Jersey is lively, full of energy. It has a lot of diversity as far as culture, food, people, different religions. It's really a kind of a reflection of like that melting pot kind of atmosphere that you get when you think of, the United States in general. So definitely had a huge culture shock since coming to Missouri.
Is there any way you guys can tell us a lot more about how students work with their material? And when I say material, I mean in terms of like their cases and how they build their cases, how familiar they are with them and whatnot.
So for my students, I kind of prioritize them finding something that they are familiar with. So whether it be something involving their social location, how they view the world, what are their reactions to things that are currently going on in their community. I want my students to feel like they are familiar with it, and so far as it's a part of them, something that's organic, something that is from them, something that they have created themselves. So I prioritize them creating their own material, creating their own kind of resources and approaches towards debate.
And I do a very similar strategy with my debaters. I work with middle school students, and I find that when they develop the case themselves, rather than me giving the information to them, they embody it a little bit more, and it becomes a part of them, like you said, and they understand it more, and therefore are able to defend and argue the case a lot better.
So what part of debate would you say is like self-taught, and what can you like elaborate on like the state curriculum that is like set up around debate?
In terms of the state curriculum around debate, we're working on that right now of infusing debate into the classroom and how we can make it a cornerstone of curriculum in every subject, not just literacy, but also in science, social studies, and mathematics as well, because we find that the tools that the students learn through competitive debate are very useful in a traditional classroom setting. It actually allows the students to explore the information a lot in a different way, more hands-on in a sense, and therefore they, again, remember and embody that information a lot better than just sitting down and reading a book. Now they get to discuss, debate it, and actually articulate their ideas. So we're really working as a league to push debate into the state curriculum in all subjects.
Do you think that this has become a barrier for any of the students, maybe even younger ones, who are fresh to the new topics of debate?
For me, working with middle school debaters, I don't see it. Because again, as I said, I start with them building the case themselves and researching it. If we were to just throw the information at them, I think it would become overwhelming. But if you scaffold it and you start from the background knowledge and then build on that, and I have 5th graders and 4th graders on my team, and they're able to grasp these very complex resolutions that some adults, when we tell them what we're debating, they don't even know what the topics are, but the students are able to, if you can scaffold for them.
You juggle 3 different things at the same time, being a college student, a debater, as well as a debate coach. And knowing just like the stress of it all, how do you cope with all that?
Well, honestly, it's taken me a very long time to kind of find the process for me to cope with it. At first, I had a lot of difficulties managing all of them together. I've been to 3 different schools as far as college goes. I've been through a bunch of different transitions to get to the spot that I wanted to be in. I've been able to kind of put myself first, and I think putting myself first has made me able to cope with all the stresses that come with the world, from having deadlines for coaching, from having deadlines that I have as a debater that I have to turn into my coaches, from having deadlines that I have to meet as a student. One of the things that I do inside of debate tournaments, though, that I find really unique is I have a coloring book that I carry with me. And during rounds, and when I'm waiting for decisions, or when I'm waiting for different rounds to come out, and I'm kind of stressed out and I'm a little bit nervous, I actually sit down, no matter what I'm doing, and I start coloring. And I just take that time out for myself and, color my lines, color whatever color I want my animals to be, and just allow my imagination to expand. And that's really helped me.
You're right, that's truly unique. I don't think I've ever heard of that.
So I know that like a great way to deal with stress is like your team. But Whitney, what kind of approach would you take to those students that like don't have a team backing or the same things?
Right.
Well,
I've come across this quite a bit on my team, where a student doesn't have a steady partner to rely on, whereas everyone around them is working with the same kid from the year before for 3 years, and it weighs on the kids, and takes a toll on them because they feel like they're there by themselves. But what I always tell them is that if they don't have a partner, they have me, and they have their entire team to rely on, and we will find somebody that is just as committed to them. And what I try to do is take a little time, put a little more interest into that one student, so that they don't quit the team because they don't have a partner to rely on, that they know that the team and the school wants them there, and so that usually helps.
Okay, the next question. Why is it necessary for debate to have a financial backing when time and ideas are free?
That's a really interesting and a really great question. That is something that we leagues in general struggle with, but we need the financial backing to have the coaching staff, not only head coaches at each school, but we need assistant coaches, particularly on the high school level, and then in some of the middle schools that have advanced teams, we do need the coaching staff. We need money for travel expenses. Debate is a very expensive activity, and this is one of the reasons why it is not an activity that a lot of schools and a lot of school districts offer, because they can't afford the travel, the lodging, the coaching, the resources. And we are very grateful that the Newark Public Schools and our funders support the Newark Debate Academy, because without them, there would be no way to run a successful and a nationally recognized league like we have.
That is true. What are your thoughts on this, Nicole?
Well, I think that in order for things to constantly keep moving and for debate to continually prospering, we have to have the financial support necessary to keep the children motivated. Not necessarily that money motivates children, but better resources definitely motivates those who are, getting those resources. I also think that, people who have dedicated their time and their labor and their effort and their intellectual power to this activity deserve some type of financial support in response to that. Debate is a very time as well as energy consuming activity. I believe that it's also very much like a sport and should kind of be treated by schools as such. It should be funded by schools. It should be supported by schools. Even though it's an activity that they feel does not bring back compensation or money back to the school, it brings back a bunch of different skills that, you can't really find in different places and different activities. So yeah, you definitely need that financial support from our institutions to keep debate growing and constantly changing, so.
Okay, this next question is for both of you. There's an adage to debate that there aren't really rules to the activity. Do you agree with that? And how does one teach to that standard?
I think that's a really good question. The unique form or understanding of debate is that there aren't actually any set rules that you have to follow, meaning that debaters literally get to make debate whatever they want, meaning that whatever you imagine the activity of debate to be, you can construct it with your very own hands, meaning that students get to be practical and use their own thoughts and kind of watch them come to life in an array of different ways, from their cases, from their research, from the knowledge that they gain, from the information that they have researched. They kind of get to create their own world and understanding and view of how they articulate that world for themselves. So I think that to teach that, you kind of have to teach children that the world has very little rules as context of what your imagination can do. And debate is about how you propagate your imagination and what you want it to do and what you intend for it to form.
In our 4th episode, we had Shagun speak about the debate classroom project. Have you implemented any special forms of learning or strategizing that you would recommend fit with that strategy?
In my classroom in particular, I have. When I was a social studies teacher in my first couple years of teaching, I did a lot of strategies of debating, particularly the Constitution and other important historical events. As a math teacher, I do still try to infuse strategies that are used in the debate classroom project. It is a little bit harder, but I do require my students to justify their answer. Every answer that they give, they must defend it with some type of evidence. And I to show them that those skills that they learn in debate are not just isolated for that activity, that it can transfer into all of the subjects. And I do find that my students are able to explain and have a deeper understanding of the skills that we're working on when I do infuse some of the debate strategies. Experience.
Okay, to any students out there feeling as if they lack the resources they need to truly be successful, what advice or tips would you give them? What advice would you give your own debaters?
I think you could have the best laptops, you can have the best access to curriculum, but the best resource that any student could have is their brain and their will and their determination to become an amazing debater, to embody what it means to be a debater. So you don't need to have all those tangible resources if you have the determination and the motivation to excel in the activity.
Yeah, I think that the most valuable resource that any of us have in this world is ourselves. You kind of have to look inside of yourself first before you can even begin to advocate for the rest of the world or seek resources from the rest of the world. If you know yourself, know what you're capable of, know what you want to be capable of, know what you strive to achieve, you don't have to worry about those resources because you are the biggest resource that is possible.
In general, I think debate has become more progressive in the sense that it's become more diverse, more inclusive of not only people, different types of people, but also ideas that are being brought in. That if you look back at debate in the 80s or 90s or even the early 2000s, it was not that way. So yes, I do believe that debate in general has become a lot more progressive.
Nicole, do you have an answer too?
Especially in terms of the city of Newark, we see that it's constantly changing as far as the success level and the rate of like us being able to outreach as far as debate goes. College debate team, we qualified for the first time from District 7, a team to the National Debate Tournament, which is really awesome, just showing that it's constantly progressing. We've gotten another first round of large bid. You know, there have been a bunch of different argumentations that have been progressed this year as far as Rutgers University goes. So the city of Newark is definitely seeing a bunch of different ideas, a bunch of different argumentation, diverse identities, as well as just diverse people. So yeah.
Wow, so the league is clearly impressive. For my last question, Nicole, is there any novel or piece that has given you personal support during a critical time?
So there are actually two pieces of literature that I like to lean on when I find myself in a difficult situation. The first is Beloved by Toni Morrison. I like to read the last 2 pages because they kind of speak to me, the story that should not be told, the story that should not be passed on. And it really makes me think about the world, how it used to be, as well as how I kind of find that history intersecting in the present and how we can't really escape some of those things. We're constantly haunted by those things. So we kind of have to face that in multiple different instances of our world, of our lives, and different positions. The second piece of literature that I really, really enjoy when times aren't that good for me is Black Unicorn by Audre Lorde. Because she tells us that our survival is not guaranteed. And, you know, as a Black woman in this world, I know that to be very true, and it speaks volumes to me. She also says that poetry is not a luxury. So the things that we do have, the ability to write myself in a new world, is something that can never be stripped from me. So it definitely constantly reminds me that I am valuable, I am worthy, and I am me.
That's honestly very powerful, Nicole. I'll have to read those two. They sound so amazing.
You definitely should.
My last question is for Whitney. Is there any advice that you would give to a teacher outside of Newark who is self-starting their own debate team?
Start off small. My first team was 4 kids. And I thought I knew what I was doing, but looking back, I couldn't have handled a team of 20 or 30 kids. So you need to start off small. The second thing is you yourself need to know debate. So before you start a team, you need to make sure that you don't have to be an expert, but knowledgeable. And if you're not knowledgeable, have a team around you that can fill in where you have deficiencies. And then you have to be committed to the team. You have to be willing to stay after school, not only after school, but respond to emails, phone calls, text messages all day, every day from your debaters, because as much as they're as excited as they are, you have to match their excitement and their interest level. And they're going to feed off of you. So if you put a lot in, they're going to match it and they're going to put a lot in. So That's the
Every
advice.
episode ends with a mini debate for the audience. And today's debate will be between Miss Nicole Nave and Miss Whitney Farrand. This segment will give a clear look into how a debate might go in our classrooms. If you're a teacher looking for students to participate more in class, mini debates are a perfect kickstarter. For all the mini debates and episodes, check out our YouTube channel. Okay, guests, the rules for our second mini debate are the following. The topic is practical application is nothing if it is a result of repetition and not true understanding of the theory behind the idea. The debate will consist of 1 minute for our first speaker, 2 minutes for questioning, 1 minute for our second speaker, 2 minutes for second questioning, 1 minute for first conclusions, and 1 minute for second conclusions. Now we will give our two speakers a couple of moments to prep out their speeches. But before you start prepping, let's do a coin flip. Who wants to?
Nicole, you can call me here.
Okay.
Now that they have had time to prepare, let's begin with our first speaker.
Well, in terms of the resolution of whether practical application is better through repetition or through a deeper conceptual understanding, I take the position that repetition is important in achieving practical application. Conceptual understanding is nothing without practice, but practice is nothing without conceptual understanding. The two of them are not mutually exclusive, and therefore we need the repetition in order to be able to develop that practical application. If someone just understands a concept in theory but never has practiced it, has never put it into a process, there will be no they will lack the ability to be able to apply it in a wide range of ideas and concepts. And therefore, I do believe that we need repetition in order to master the transition to practical application.
Okay, now that the first speech is done, we can have 2 minutes for a question.
Okay. So my first question for Ms. Farrand is, how exactly does practice make perfect?
Well, practice makes perfect because through practice you find out you discovered your mistakes, and therefore you learn from those mistakes, and if you do it correctly, you will no longer make those same mistakes, and therefore the practice would lead to perfect practice.
And my second question is, how do you come to the point where you know your students are understanding and actually practically practicing the concepts that you've taught them?
Well, I know that they are able to apply practical application when they have a balance of the conceptual understanding as well as the procedural understanding. So they've gone through the repetition, we've discussed the concept, they understand the concept, and now they've practiced it over and over again, and they understand and they've embodied the procedure. And then I know they're ready to apply it. So they need to embody the procedure.
Thank you.
Okay, now that our questioning is done, we will give 1 minute for Nicole to have her
The
first
world
speech.
and how we view ourselves in it. We must understand a theoretical framework that supports things. So for us to begin understanding how we can even begin to memorize things or make things practical, we need to learn how things function, the intricate ideas and the details that make things possible in the first place. If we don't understand these things, the knowledge that we do understand or that we memorize becomes completely useless because we have no idea how to articulate how it can look in the real world. I think that theory gives us the ability to translate things into practical. Without understanding theory, we understand nothing, and we literally end up without any understanding of the world or how we view ourselves inside of it. So before we can begin practicing, we must understand the framework for how things happen.
Now that the second speech is over, we can have questioning once again for 2 minutes.
So you said that one needs a theoretical understanding in order to transition into practical application, correct?
Yes.
Now, do we learn about concepts in a bubble, in isolation?
I don't believe that we learn about things in a bubble or in isolation, but I believe that people learn in a multitude of different ways. And I think that before we can learn how to make things practical, we must understand how those things work in the first place.
Okay, so do you agree that in order to be able to apply a theory, you do need to practice it?
I think that you will inevitably find yourself practicing some things, but I think that in order for your practice to actually be useful, you must understand that theory first. So I'm making a prerequisite argument.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now that our second questioning is done, we will have 1 minute on the clock for our first speaker's conclusions.
So in conclusion, I do believe that repetition is important for practical application. I do agree with Nicole's position that you do need a theoretical understanding. However, I do believe that the practice is just as important, if not as important, more important than the conceptual understanding. Because in order to apply in a wide range of settings, you need to have that experience of practicing it, an idea over and over again. That way you build and understand your own understanding rather than what someone has taught you about it. You build your own understanding through the practice.
Okay, now that our conclusion from our first speaker is done, we'll now have the conclusions coming from our second speaker.
I think that we inevitably find ourselves in a world where we have to practice our theories for them to come to life. But I think that in order for our practices to be perfect, we must understand those theories as a prioritization. I think that those understandings of those theories gives us potential to build upon things, because our understanding of those theories can become tangible and give us the tools necessary for us to have practice and repetition and understand things. I think that when we simply practice and don't understand the theoretical part behind it, we often do ourselves a disservice in our practice, and we just don't have the settings, the materials, or the sources that we need to make things more efficient or more understandable to those that we're attempting to deport our information to.
Well, that was a good debate. Now that it is done, you at home get to decide who actually won that debate. My name is Bradley Gomia, and I was your host.
My name is Oyewano Fasasi, and I was your co-host.
And you're watching the Newark Debaters.
Not only are they national champions, but they made collegiate debate history. They're double champions, winning the championship of this Cross-Examination Debate Association National Tournament and the championship of the National Debate Tournament. There's only one time in history before that was done, and it was done, in fact, by a Newark debater, Elijah Smith, and his partner, Ryan Walsh, is actually the coach.